Even though it's technically Friday when I'm uploading this, welcome to the Thursday Sports Q&A here on Schleg Daddy TV. Reminder, sports Q&As happen every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday on this channel. If you want information on how to have your questions answered, just check out the description box below. Let's get started with this Q&A though. At JGore492 starts it off by asking, who are your current top 5 head coaches in the NFL right now? In no particular order, I would go with Pete Carroll, Jim Harbaugh, Bill Belichick. And I'm going to throw a couple other names out there too that might surprise people a little bit. Mike McCarthy of the Green Bay Packers, and then Mike Tomlin of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Some of you might look at McCarthy and be like, hey, you're talking about a team that's made the playoffs 5 straight seasons now. You talk about a team that's won 3 straight division crowns. You're talking about a team that in 2010 went on to win the Super Bowl. The next season came back and had a 15-1 season. Excuse me. I don't think McCarthy gets the credit he deserves for the quality of head coach that he is. You could sit there and talk about Aaron Rodgers till you blue in the face, and obviously that matters. But Aaron Rodgers has sure benefited from being around Mike McCarthy, and Mike McCarthy, even through injuries and different things, still seems to find a way to keep this team competitive every single season and one of the better teams in the NFC and perhaps the National Football League. So I think he belongs. And then Mike Tomlin, you talk about a coach that's won a Super Bowl, gotten to the Steelers to the playoffs several other times. And when I look at last season for the Steelers, that was not a very good team. And they didn't start off very well. The fact that they were even in the mix for the playoffs the last week of the season, I think, is a tremendous credit and testament to Mike Tomlin's coaching abilities, being able to get the best out of whatever he's got. So there would be my top 5 that I could think of. At Devin Throw asks, who's the better quarterback, Andrew Luck, Cam Newton, or Russell Wilson? The quarterback I would rather be at the particular moment is Russell Wilson, just because I've got the Super Bowl ring. In terms of the more traditional prototype, future of the position type of quarterback, everybody's going to point to Andrew Luck. But I'm a really big Cam Newton fan too. In terms of who's maybe the best, I would have to say maybe Luck, but I don't think the margin is as great between Luck and the other two as you might think. At Chris S. Krager, could the Bills make the playoffs if they were in another division? Because they haven't made it since China and Jericho were co-IC champions. That's very true back in 99. You're absolutely right. If they were in another division, not necessarily. I mean, what other division could they go to and make the playoffs? Are you telling me that they're better than the Indianapolis Colts? I don't think so. Are you telling me that they're better than the Baltimore Ravens or the Pittsburgh Steelers or the Cincinnati Bengals? Probably not. They're most certainly not better than the Denver Broncos, let alone the Kansas City Chiefs or the San Diego Chargers as of right now. I'm just saying in general, just because they haven't been able to win their division doesn't mean that they didn't have a path to the playoffs. You have the wild card. So the fact is they still have failed to make the playoffs since the 1999 season. And, of course, the Nashville Nightmares, I call it for Bills fans. So, no, if they were in another division, they wouldn't necessarily be in the playoffs. At Pete from A West, so Pete from Australia, I'm assuming, or Austin? I'm assuming Austin, yeah. Does the Texans signing of Tyson Clabo change anything in H-Town, and should he replace Derek Newton? Maybe. But it doesn't change anything. I mean, let's be honest here. You're asking me a Tyson Clabo question. What is that really going to change? And I mean that seriously. What is that really going to change? At Shablagoosh asks, what are your thoughts on the Saints bounty scandal? Do you think the Vikings would have won the Super Bowl that year otherwise? Otherwise compared to what? Because of Bountygate? I don't see where you really draw the parallel, because you look at that NFC Championship game. How many times did AP fumble the ball? You had that fumble from Percy Harvin. You had that terrible decision by Brett Favre when he could have just run for the first down and put the team in field goal position. He decided on a 3rd and 5 to throw across his body. So, no, I don't think that scandal has anything to do with the Vikings not making it to the Super Bowl. If they would have made the Super Bowl, do I think they would have beat the Colts? Yes, because I think they were a more balanced, complete team than the Saints were that year. At Van Raleigh, who's the best quarterback of this generation? Interesting question, because you have to, I think, properly define this generation. You didn't really specify here, because you kind of have like 3 different generations of quarterbacks. You still have the Manning, Brady, Breeze crowd, if you will. Then you have that crowd of Aaron Rodgers and Phillip Rivers and Big Ben and Eli. I'm not saying that in terms of rankings, people. I'm saying that in terms of the generations. And now you've got the more recent generation of the guys like the Matt Ryans and the Russell Wilsons, the Cam Newtons, the RG3s, the Andrew Lucks of the world, the Colin Kaepernicks of the world. So I'm not sure what you mean by of this generation. Which generation are you referring to? If I went with the older generation out of the three, I still would take Brady. Sorry. Peyton Manning's statistics are tremendous and wonderful, but I wouldn't want to get to the playoffs every year just to lose and end up my season in disappointment. Brady hasn't won a Super Bowl himself in a damn decade, but I'd still rather have Brady because Manning's always seemed to me to have that great talent around him, which he's always had in his career. Whereas Brady could be successful and take his team to great things without having that great talent around him. In terms of that middle generation, I'll take Aaron Rodgers all day. And then that newer generation, you maybe take Luck. You could take Newton, Russell Wilson. I think Kaepernick's due for a big year. So it's a good time to watch the NFL. A lot of great quarterback plays. It really is. At Royal 23 Flush, have you heard about the Bulls' offer of Gibson, Mirotic, and McDermott for Kevin Love? I think it's stupid. I agree. I think it's incredibly stupid. And the reason I say that is, why did you sign Paul Gasol? Where would Gasol, Love, and Noah all play in the same front court? That seems to not make a lot of sense to me. It almost seems like the Bulls want to make this move to keep Kevin Love away from the Cleveland Cavaliers. And sometimes you try to make those moves. It's not just with your own organization in mind, it's with other organizations in mind as well. But with that being said, again, where are you going to find playing time for all three of these guys? And you say, well, give Gasol a lesser role, then why bother signing him in free agency to begin with? Gasol's still a guy that can play, up to 30 minutes a game and still be highly productive. Why sit there and cut into Noah's minutes big time or Gasol's minutes big time? I just don't think it makes a whole lot of sense, personally. At Hut, NHL 14 player, who do you think has a better defense, the Broncos or the Patriots? On paper, a lot of people would probably say the Broncos. I don't think either defense is all that particularly good, frankly. I think both defenses are a little bit on the overrated side in terms of the standpoint of the fans and some sports media. On paper, like I said, the Broncos are going to look better, but I look at the offseason signings. You bring in Aqib Talib. Was he really an upgrade over Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie? You're bringing in DeMarcus Ware, and everybody thinks that's so great and splendid. Well, you're not bringing in DeMarcus Ware, the 3-4 outside linebacker in his prime. You're bringing in injured, over the age of 30, 4-3 defensive end that isn't the same player at that position. You brought in a TJ Ward to be an in-the-box safety when you really needed a center fielding free safety. The Broncos made moves on defense. You drafted Bradley Roby, but at that point in time, Bradley Roby might not be able to contribute a whole ton, especially as a starter right away as a rookie. They made moves. That doesn't mean that they necessarily got a whole lot better. So I'll take the Patriots. I do see where getting Revis and getting Browner makes them a whole lot better on defense in a hurry. At JH Mills 22, what do the Tigers need to do to win the World Series? Adding Joakim Soria is a good place to start. They needed help in the bullpen. Hoping the A's implode would be another good thing. They just need to execute better at key moments, which has been a fault of theirs in recent years. So they probably need Verlander to pitch a little bit better too. At Nick Cool 123, how do you feel about Ryan Fitzpatrick being the starting quarterback for the Texans? Does he have Fitz magic left in him? I didn't know he had Fitz magic to begin with, and if that's what you call Fitz magic, then I would suggest you go back to the Fitz magic store and get a Fitz refund. Don't really understand why they brought him in to be the starter, and they really didn't give him any competition. I actually think the Texans should explore signing Kyle Orton at this point. What does it hurt? What are you going to lose? Not much. You could potentially have a guy that could start for you for a good portion of the season and really provide some competition to Fitzpatrick. At Mark Lioness Jr., do you think RG3 can come back and be a quality starter? And if not, how long will Washington wait until replacing him? As far as the replacing him portion, it'd be at least another 2 seasons before they'd even entertain or consider that. They'd probably play out his entire rookie contract, so it's going to be a couple of years. Do I think he can come back and be a quality starter? Yes, absolutely. I don't see why he can't. I think he needs to focus a little less on the off the field stuff and become a little more dedicated to the on the field stuff. Personally, I'd like to see him focus a little more on earning that adulation and admiration and respect and those endorsements instead of just taking them already. That's just me, though. And Master Havoc, what do you think of the sudden buzz for Kevin Love to the Bulls? We're giving up too much for him, I think. As I mentioned with the other question about it, I don't particularly like the move because I just don't think it makes a whole lot of sense. And, you know, basically getting a Kevin Love is a much better version of Carlos Boozer. You'd actually be getting, a top flight scorer, but you're also giving a guy that doesn't contribute a whole lot on the defensive end of the court either. And he's not a athletic enough power forward, if you will, to be able to guard some of the more athletic stretch fours that you would have to face, and he would cause some troubles. You might say, well, Paul Gasol's like that, and to a degree that is true as well. But there is the other thing. You already have Noah, you already have Gasol. Where are you going to play all three of these guys? That's an interesting question. And again, as I mentioned earlier, I think this potential trade is being thought of as much to keep him away from Cleveland as it is for what he can actually do to Chicago. While I understand that philosophy, I do not agree with it. At Chris is nice. Will Michael Sam make an impact for the Rams? There's a possibility. I mean, he's a guy that can rush the passer. He's not a great athlete, nor was he ever. And that's part of the reason why he dropped until the 7th round. I don't think it was a sexual preference. I do think it was because, teams looked at him and didn't see great explosiveness. He was a productive player, but they weren't sure how he would transition to the NFL, and they weren't sure what position he would play. I think potentially as a situational edge rusher, I think he could make a little bit of an impact, but I'm not sure it would be in 2014. And frankly, I'm also not that sure it will end up with the St. Louis Rams because it's a team that's very deep at that position already. Again, thanks to all of you guys that submitted your questions for this Q&A. I'll be doing another one on Sunday. Make sure you check out all the other great sports and other etc. related content here on Schleg Daddy TV on YouTube.com.